The folks at Banggood.com have sent me an amplified mini speaker kit to assemble and show you guys how it goes together and how it works. And this is 3 watt per channel stereo amplifier. It's powered by a standard USB type power supply, and it's not bad. It takes a little bit of time to put it together. Let's do it. So as I unpackage everything, I've got my instruction manual printed out, my schematics and board layout. It doesn't come with instructions, but you can print the basic board layout, the schematic, and the parts list is available online, so it makes it for relatively easy to figure things out. It comes with all of the wires and necessary components to assemble the unit. Give me some wire to hook up the speakers, etc. That's the power supply. I found that you do end up having to cut the plug off. At least my kit didn't come with a receptacle for the power, so I just cut the end of the plug off and soldered the wires directly down. Here's the speakers. They're small speakers, but they actually don't have bad sound for the size of them. Opening the parts bag, we have 3 circuit boards, and actually one of them you snap into because for the 2 displays they come as one board, so we have to separate them. And it comes with all the parts. Those ICs that I'm holding in my hand there, those are actually for the LED displays, because the unit does have LED type VU meters that will flash to the beat of the music in each of them. So before assembly, I'm going to just sort through my parts to make sure that all the components are complete and I'm not missing any of the semiconductors. So I'm just going through my parts list right now, making sure that everything's there, and then I'll begin assembling the amplifier boards. The first component I'm going to mount is the volume control. So it just snaps in place onto the bottom, onto the circuit board. The components are mounted on the side that has the silk screening. Once I've got that pressed in place, I'll solder it down onto the board. Next, I'm going to mount the amplifier ICs. Now, these are the only 2 surface-mounted components. There's one in each board because each speaker has its own amplifier. Rather than put a stereo amplifier in one box and just run the second speaker as a dummy speaker, this kit actually supplies power to the second speaker and has another amplifier board in the other channel. So this is a mono amplifier that's being installed here. It is a chip component. Pin 1 is indicated by the notch on the silk screen, and there's a dot on pin 1 of the IC for orientation. So the dot will be facing towards me. I'm just going to put a bit of liquid flux, rosin flux, onto the board here. This is to aid in soldering down the surface-mounted component. That way I can tack down one lead first and then go and solder the other 7 pins down. So I'm just going to orient the chip, line it up, and then get my soldering iron and tack down one of the pins in the corner, check my alignment, and then solder the rest down. And yes, I realize I'm using quite a big tip for this. Normally you would use a smaller tip, but I didn't feel like changing it. This is not that difficult to install one of these ICs. So I just solder down one side first. That'll hold the chip in place. Then I can check my alignment, and then I'll go do the other 7 pins. And we'll do the same for the other board. This is for the opposite channel, so this would be for the right channel. The left channel is the one I just did. So we'll put the IC in place for that. I'm just getting the two surface mounted parts put in place first, as it's a little easier to mount them when there's no other components on the board itself. That way the board can lie flat while I'm working on it. We'll get the ICs in place first, and then I think it was the resistors I did next. We'll do the resistors and then the capacitors. Back to the main board, and this is a mistake that I made, that I would recommend putting the large capacitor in last. But in this case I put C104, which is the 220 microfarad capacitor. I installed it first, and it made putting some of the other parts in a little more difficult, just because the angle the board was sitting up on, right? So I would recommend, if you're doing this, mount your resistors first, then mount your smaller capacitors, and put this one in last, because it just makes it a little easier. Then the board will still lie flat while you're working on it. So first we'll install R1. Now both these boards are identical, so I'm only going to show the construction of one board, because the components are the same on both. So R1 is the first one to go in, and it's I believe it was a 10K. Next is R2. R2 is a 47K resistor. So we'll get that one mounted there onto the spot marked R2. R3 is a 1K resistor, and it goes just below the C4 capacitor, where I'm installing it right there. Next is C2. This is not polarized as capacitor, and it'll have the marking 104 on it. There's one of them on each of the boards. The other ceramic capacitors are all 1 microfarad, and they have a marking 105, and that would be for C1 and C3. Now this completes the component mounting on this amplifier board. I'm going to do the other one now. Don't need to show you guys that, though it's constructed exactly the same. So now we'll move on to the LED drivers and then the speaker cabinets. First up is mounting the IC. Notice that pin 1 is indicated by the square pin on the circuit board, and there's a flat side on the IC itself to indicate pin number 1. I'm just going to bend over a couple of the leads here to prevent the IC from falling out while I solder it in place. Again, there's pin number 1. This is for the second board. Pin number 1's got the square pin, and you'll notice there is a corner that has a slot on it. A flat corner. That's indicating pin number 1 for the IC. So just mount the IC and solder it down, and then we can put the other components on and then start our final construction. The assembly of the actual plastic cases, the cabinets, actually takes longer than mounting the components, but there's a trick to installing and bolting these cabinets together, and a lot of people have expressed frustration to get all these little bolts and nuts together, but there's actually a trick to do it, and I'll show you how to do it. It makes putting these things together a snap. Next, we're going to mount RP2, which is the trimmer potentiometer. This is for calibrating the displays, and there's one on each board, and it just snaps in like that. Only one way it goes in, and we'll solder that one down. We'll now mount the LEDs. The longer lead is the positive lead, and the board is marked with a plus. Now these LEDs are going to be mounted at a right angle, so when you put them down through the board, there's actually a pressed point on the leads where they stop. So just push them to the point that they stop. Don't force them down flush, because we will be bending them at a 90-degree angle so that they'll go through the front of the cabinet. So that's how the LEDs sit like that. They're going to sit up about, I guess they sit up about a 1/4 inch from the board itself. You can see clearly the marks on the leads themselves where they've been pressed. They've been flattened out so that they won't go down any further than that. So we'll just mount the 5 LEDs for each of the boards. We now bend each of the LEDs at a 90-degree angle so that when the board is mounted into the cabinet, the LEDs will protrude through the front of the cabinet. We'll now mount C5 and 6. These are 10 microfarad electrolytic capacitors, and they are polarity sensitive. Oh no, we're heading for a catastrophe. I've been invaded. Okay, now just about finished up the final parts on the LED display boards. So next, I can start to put together the plastic cabinets. Yikes. So first things first, we have to remove the protective paper from the acrylic kit. This is to protect the kit while it's being cut, and they prevent scratches on it. So this is one of the most time-consuming parts, picking off all this paper, because it's stuck on there pretty good. So we'll get this all removed, and then we'll proceed to start assembling the plastic cabinet. One of the most time-consuming parts of this entire project was removing the paper off the 12 pieces of acrylic that are used to make the cabinet. So now we can concentrate on building the cabinet. Of course, figuring out what screws to use is also half the fun, because they don't give you any instructions for this part, right? You just kind of have to play it by ear and figure out what screws fit where. Okay, I think the power switch goes into this one here, like that. The power switch just pops in like that to this unit, and this board here must go in like that. Oh, great. Now I got another one in here. A little bigger one this time. It's gonna knock everything down. I think this is another back piece here. So this is gonna be, I guess this goes together like this. That goes together like that, okay? And there'll be a base with a couple tabs that goes into the bottom. I think it goes together like this. Okay, I think it goes together like that. So this will be the base that this fits in, like that. So we're going to put a standoff on the board. And this will be a short screw. See, this is where these things get tricky. You have to kind of figure out where all these little pieces go, and so that should go like that, and then this should sit on there like that and go in there like that. Okay, that's how that goes together. And then we still have to attach the switch using some jumper wires to here. And I have another cord here. This is the cord that connects the two speakers together. So, and we have some fine hookup wire here for connecting everything up. And some heavier wire to connect to this stuff, things like the switches and the power jack and stuff. So let's hook the switch up here. We'll get the switch connected. And now we attach the wires from the switch to the circuit board where it's indicated. It's marked switch. I'm now connecting the speaker leads to the circuit board, paying attention to the polarity. The positive speaker wire to the positive terminal and the negative speaker wire to the negative terminal. Now I'm using the same color wire, but that doesn't matter. Wire color is not important, but it is important to follow the correct polarity from what's marked on the speaker to what's marked on the circuit board. As you can see, it's much easier to put a piece of tape across the back or the front side of the cabinet. That way you can put the little nut down into the slot and the tape will hold it in place so it won't drop out. It makes assembling these cabinets much easier. It took me a few of these kits before I figured out that this was much easier than trying to hold the thing in place with your finger while you're trying to put the screw in with the other hand. I'm now going to hook up the 3 interconnect wires for ground, DAC, and VCC from the amplifier board to the display board. So there's one of these in each of the speakers, and they're wired exactly the same. There's just the 3 terminals, so I'm just going to use 3 strands of black wire because it's not a color of the wire is not important. So what I've done now is I've just created 3 jumper wires for the VCC, DAC, and ground to go to the little light display, and we'll just twist these together so that they look kind of neat, but they don't have to be specific colors. We could use black. And then we'll mount the circuit board to the top cover. And screw it in place. Now we're going to connect the interconnect that connects the 2 speakers together. There's 5 wires in this one. You've got your positive and negative wire, and audio and ground, and the audio for the display. So there's 5 wires. It doesn't matter what order you connect them as long as you connect them the same on both sides. So I'm just going to strip the wire here and tack it down to the 5 terminals that are marked on the left edge of the board there. Next is the 3.5 millimeter audio input wire. So we're going to fish this one through one of the small holes in the back of the speaker cabinet. and like the others, I'll tie a knot in it so that the wire can't be pulled free. And it is just attached down to the edge of the board where it's marked left and right input with ground. Black is the ground, white is the left, and the red wire is the right channel. Last but not least is the power line. And I've brought this in through the same hole that the audio interconnect that goes to the other speaker box is through. We're going to tin the leads and attach it. There was a barrel plug on the end of that. I cut it off because there was no jack that attaches to the box. We're just going to solder the wires directly down. The red is the positive, the white is the negative lead. Solder that down to the board, and that will complete this speaker. Now I can mount the little amplifier board and put the cabinet together, and we'll do the same on the other. We'll connect the other wires on the other one, assemble the cabinets, and test the unit and see if it works. Same for the other one. Okay, that's most of this one put together. We'll wire the other amp board up first before we continue. Now we have to wire this up the same sequence that we did on the other one. Otherwise, it won't work. So obviously the red and the black are going to be the power and the ground. So I'll do this one before mounting the board. Just going to put some solder on here just to make it a little easier to just tack these down. Red is power, black is ground, and then I went green, yellow, white was the sequence I went. So green, yellow, and white. Doesn't matter what color you use as long as you have the same color for both sides. This is just an interconnect. And then we'll do the same for the speaker wires here. I've got my two little red pieces here. Doesn't matter what color I use as long as I get the polarity correct going to the speaker. So as long as I have the positive going to the positive and the negative going to the negative, it really doesn't matter what color the wire is. In this case, they sent me some red wires, so that's what I'm going to use, is the red wires that came with it. So this is my speaker positive. So it's going to go to my speaker to the plus side.
Speaker negative. Okay, that part's done. Let's get the last cover in place for the first speaker. I'm trying to wipe all as much dust off this thing as I can before I put it together. The last piece goes in on this one, like that. This is where it gets fun, because I can't obviously put the nuts in from the inside because I've already built the box. So we have to get creative now. Get myself some new tape. Just like that. I believe I've got them all. So let's put some power to these things and see what they do. Moment of truth. Got my USB power adapter. I'll plug these in. And here we go. And then we have blinky lights that link with the music. Blue, of course. I'll set this camera up a bit with a different angle here. Notice that the volume control doesn't affect the display. The displays keep going regardless when you turn the volume down, the LED displays. And you can calibrate them with the control on the top, so you can set them to your music level coming in. There you have it. I missed a screw. I gotta go back and do that one. That's a fail. Anyway, I'll fix that. There you go. There's the Banggood.com amplified speaker kit. Took a few hours to put this thing together. Relatively straightforward. It's a good kit. There is no instructions that tell you which part to put where. Well, you got the sheet, right? You got the parts location, but that's what you get. It's pretty straightforward, not difficult at all. There's a couple of surface-mounted components that you saw, other than the two surface-mounted amplifier ICs. This is a pretty straightforward little package here, a little kit. And there you go. Thanks for watching.